Hey, welcome back to Guitar Discoveries. I'm Robert Cassard. So in my quest to help you as a guitarist and singer, I really want to help you play and sound your best and to get the absolute most for your money, like when you're buying gear, guitars, amps, accessories, mics, plugins, you name it. So in this video, I'm going to share the best $199 I've ever spent on making and recording music. This is the most impressive and important music making and recording tool I know of. It actually gives you the capability to record your music and get totally professional, maybe even hit-worthy results. Now, once you have this tool, you may want some help. You might not need a lot of help, but you probably want someone to show you the basics, give you some shortcuts and the big secrets that are hidden in the tool. So today you're going to meet the guy who can give you more help than anyone else I've found. So stay with me for an interview with a top expert that actually might be the key to recording your music and leaving your musical legacy. Here goes. My guest today is my favorite Logic Pro educator. His name is Chris Vandeviver. And Chris has created a channel. He's actually the creator and host of a growingly popular YouTube channel called Why Logic Pro Rules. Sometimes we think of it as WLPR to those in the know. He is also a longtime music producer and audio engineer. So I want to welcome you, Chris. Welcome to Guitar Discoveries.
Thanks so much for having me. I was really awesome. We had a chance meeting at NAMM this past June, and that was fun, right outside of a coffee shop.
So, Chris, the name of your YouTube channel, Why Logic Pro Rules. The first time I saw it, I thought, that's kind of a bold name. You are committed 100% to Logic Pro, which, of course, I think most of the subscribers to my channel would know that that's Apple's professional music recording software. It is exclusive to the Mac platform. So, that's another reason that I thought that's kind of bold. He's not just like, hey, any DAW will do. Tell me about how you decided to focus in on Logic.
I've been using Logic Pro since 8, which is not as long as some folks who reach out to me. They've been doing it since like eMagic was its own company. I was in a band. I was in a few bands and we were touring and we would go to the studio, and that was the dream, to record an awesome album and tour. Eventually, it just kind of became like, well, going to the studio is kind of expensive. The folks in our band started to go separate ways. And I was like, maybe I can record my own music. Yep. And my buddy turned me on to the Apple platform and Logic Pro. And I had tried out Adobe's recording software, Audition, and it looked like gobbledygook to me. I had no idea what was going on. And then I tried Fruity Loops, and that seemed more geared towards folks who wanted to work with drum machines. And eventually it landed on Logic Pro thanks to my buddy Jordan. And then that just sent me down the rabbit hole because I started to record my own music and my own efforts. And though the dream is, or the sort of the mission a lot of folks put out there is now you can record your own music. You don't need a studio. I would record my own music and the results were not satisfying. And,
right.
And I'm the type of person who wants to learn and figure things out. So I was really bothered by the fact that it sounded terrible. And I fell down the rabbit hole of recording and mixing and producing. And then I stuck with Logic Pro just because I preferred it over other platforms. Several folks throughout time tried to convince me otherwise, but I stuck through. And I'm really glad I stuck through because I think the current iteration of Logic Pro, which is technically 10, it's 10.7.3 at this moment. In the last 10 years, I think that it's just grown by leaps and bounds. And what it cannot achieve is very little. And what it can achieve is massive for just about any creative.
So I was looking online before this interview and I noticed that Musicians HQ had done this survey. They'd kind of looked at the top hit albums of the years 2010 to 2020. So that 10-year period. And not surprisingly, Pro Tools was the number one digital audio workstation. Like 65% of the albums were recorded on Pro Tools. But I was really, pleased and surprised to see that Logic was in second place with about 20% of the hit albums recorded on Logic or in Logic. I never know whether to say on or in.
Yeah, sure.
I think of on tape, in Logic, I guess.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, we're talking about a piece of software that costs $199. I still shake my head about that. So I started recording my own music back in the 70s when it was a lot harder and more expensive to get truly professional results. And I worked my way up through 2-track stereo tape to 4-track to 8-track to 24-track systems until finally computer technology offered this brave new world, essentially unlimited tracks in a digital audio workstation. That's sometimes called a DAW or a DAW. Where I think, tell me about the value. What does $199 buy someone when they get Logic Pro?
Oh man, that's like so much to unpack there.
True.
It gives you a fully fledged DAW like any other DAW, but what I think Logic excels at is that the team at Apple, I feel, have really made an effort to make things simpler, more straightforward, streamlined, more intuitive to get started and working. You can record any style of music in Logic Pro, whether it's rock-based, where you're multi-track recording drums and bass and guitars, to electronic musicians and hip-hop producers. I mean, Drum Machine Designer and the samplers in Logic are easily drag and drop. It's easy to get started. And with the step sequencer, you can plug in chord patterns and drum beats, just like you would on a drum machine. The synth collection in Logic Pro is massive. I mean, just Alchemy alone is a powerhouse synth that Apple actually acquired this company called Camel Audio several years ago. And many of the tools from Camel Audio, such as Alchemy and the other multi-effects plugins, have made their way into Logic Pro. And you can put together entire orchestral ensembles. I mean, there's notation. There's 20,000 Apple loops that are royalty free for you to use. I mean, Rihanna's first hit single was based on an Apple loop. It's still that beat from GarageBand, also yes. Logic Pro. So there's just so much value. The live loops function of Logic Pro, which basically is turned Logic Pro, created an iteration of what Ableton started, which is the clip-based nonlinear style production, instead of just a purely timeline-based production. Live loops are fantastic, and that's including rock musicians as well. It's not just for bedroom producers. I even have a video illustrating me writing and recording into live loops with guitar and bass. So man, I could go on and on about it.
What you're telling me, and what I tell everybody, is that Logic is such an incredible bargain that you could pay the $199 just for one thing, right? The Alchemy synth as a perfect example.
Yeah.
Or anything else. It has so many built-in plugins, I'm calling them. I mean, they're built in, but they still function as plugins. Mm-hmm. One of the things that because my viewers, many of them are guitarists, quite a few are guitarists who also sing. I've seen a trend over time that many of my subscribers are asking, okay, I've done some recording, might be like you. I might have even done something in the studio, but I don't know where to do it myself, or when I do it myself, I'm not happy with the results. I wanted to share one thing and have you comment on it. I made an interesting path. I used to use Digital Performer, which was a Motu product, and that was back in the 90s, because I was doing some film scores, and they had a great way to synchronize film. You could synchronize the film to your music. And so a lot of film composers used it. I produced rock albums and alternative albums using that software. And then I sort of got away from music for a little while. I was having kids and doing all that. And then when I came back in, lo and behold, all my Macs were loaded with GarageBand, right? And I'd been told, people were like, yeah, GarageBand's kind of surprising, audio fidelity is really good. You might be surprised by what it'll do. I was just fooling around, recording some things into GarageBand and comparing them to things that I'd done professionally, either in other studios or in my own with higher end equipment. And I was like, oh my gosh, GarageBand sounds great. I mean, it was built on the Logic audio engine, right? It's really the same audio engine as far as I know. So I was kind of blown away by that. And then one day somebody said to me, well, you should upgrade to Logic because you can just open your GarageBand files in Logic. Yeah. And I thought that can't be true, right? It can't be possible that I'd recorded a bunch of backing tracks for the duo I have with my wife, and we use them live all the time, recorded in GarageBand. I thought, you mean I could open them in Logic and we could start layering tracks and actually make this real? And I did it, and I could not believe how seamless it was. So do any of your subscribers, are any of those folks coming from the GarageBand world and trying to, open up into more capabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. Many of the folks who reach out to me, which there are plenty, they're usually just like peppering me with questions because I'm the guy who's there to help them. But I have had a few people go from GarageBand to Logic Pro. I think that they do feel a little overwhelmed by that experience of going to Logic Pro because their GarageBand can do a lot, right? It's got so much available in it. There are certain limitations put on the product, on purpose because it's a free product. When you expand into the full-blown mixer with all the plugins and all the stuff you can do, they feel a little overwhelmed. But Logic has been adjusted over time to try to be simpler, closer to GarageBand, less advanced features if you don't want to see them quite yet. So you feel a little more at home in Logic Pro when you make that step.
I think you put it perfectly. That my experience, and I think I came to Logic late enough that they had already sort of, I want to say, made the interface quite uniform with GarageBand. So when I made the change, I opened up Logic and I thought, where are all the features? I had that initial reaction of, it doesn't seem like it's that much different. And then, of course, you start looking at the menus, you look at the mixer, you look at the automation. Really, it is the sky's the limit. I can't think of anything that Logic Pro won't do that I've wanted it to do. So it's pretty awesome. I would love to kind of focus in a little bit on guitar and vocals for a second. What is an advantage of using Logic Pro, let's say, and I'll start with an electric guitarist just for grins, because I know electric guitarists, they're always looking for cool sounds and all of that. What's an advantage of Logic for an electric guitarist?
The first thing that pops out in my brain, which might be kind of surprising, is the take folder system in Logic Pro, where you're able to record take after take after take. And unlike some other DAWs where it focuses on a playlist system, so you record multiple takes, but then you have to chop up the regions or clips and then move them, up and down between different playlist take lanes. The take folder system in Logic, everything is just in this expandable and collapsible folder system. So when you open the folder, all you do is take your mouse and you swipe across the bits that you like. So the best bits of each take that you want, just click, swipe. And once you've comped together the best guitar recording take that you're happy with, you just close the folder and you never have to look at it again. And it just solves so much in terms of making edits, fades, all that sort of stuff. So Logic does it all. You just tell it which parts you like. The guitar amps and pedals, pedal board is actually one of my favorite things in Logic. And I feel like I don't even give it that much lip service. But I think of pedal board, not even like a pedal board. I think of it as my rack of analog gear. There's the true tape delay in there. I will often use it as a stereo instance where there are two pedals that allow you to split a single mono thread into stereo. So you can slap a delay on each side, left and right, pan them left and right. And then it has a really analog-y vibe, and you can add flutter and wow. And I use it on vocals all the time. I love it for that. The tremolo stuff in there is great. Just the phasers. I love simpler interfaces. And while Logic has a dedicated modulation folder for phaser, tremolo, all these things, pedalboard speaks to me a lot more, probably because I started out playing guitar and bass, it makes more sense to me. So I like that a lot. Amp Designer and Bass Amp Designer, I like a lot. I like a lot of the Fender amps, or what would be a Fender or a Vox amp. Often I'll use those in place of big 4x12 guitar stacks because I feel like they have a better, more focused sound to them.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot. Bass Amp Designer is sick because you have three classic stacks, so to speak. Right. You have like your classic fridge, your Ampeg fridge, or you have something like the flip top bass amp head. But you can also blend a DI in parallel. There's a slider that switches between amp and DI, and you have an Avalon style pre for the DI, what looks like an Avalon pre. And you can easily blend and get the exact tone you want for Bass Amp Designer. I like Bass Amp Designer a lot. Those are the ones that stick out to me the most for guitar players. Oh, and I don't even know why this wasn't first. Drummer. I mean, Drummer in Logic Pro is amazing. And I feel like so many people, number one, I know so many people use Drummer in place of a real drummer. I mix so many projects for people where they use Drummer instead. And also just the versatility. It's not a drum loop. You don't just like slap a loop down and copy and paste it 100 times. It's a drum performer that changes its performance based on what parts you specify. using the arrangement markers. But then you can also say, hey, drummer, follow my bass performance in this section. And drummer adapts its performance and what it identifies transients and figures out cues for the kick and snare patterns and such. And it matches up with your performance. You can have an entire song worth of drums in like 10 minutes and it will sound fantastic and human.
I got to tell you, I mean, you and I are both fanboying on Drummer.
Yeah.
I think when I first opened Drummer, I didn't yet understand how it worked and how intuitive it actually was. But once I figured out that you could simply make a cut and that it would automatically assume you probably want to fill before that cut, when I started to realize what it was doing, and then that I could say, oh, that region I want to add shaker, that region I want to do, add tambourine, whatever it is. The craziness of being able to pull together an entire supportive, freaking real sounding drummer. I mean, we're talking about great samples and a huge variety of samples. You can build the drum set however you want. You can choose the personality of the drummer you want. That cracks me up that I want Austin to play on my tracks today.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I hear a lot of people diss Logic's drummer. But my wife and I did an EP using only Logic drummers through the whole thing. I literally have had people say, who is your drummer? That guy is awesome. No kidding. Like he is reading your mind. He's got such feel. I get comments like that all the time. And I'm like, well, it's Austin.
Yeah, that's amazing. You should credit Austin in the liner notes.
Yeah, you know what? I've done it. I actually have. It cracks me up. But it's funny because I came from the world of building, literally programming hit by hit. And, we had the old, D10 pad and playing along and then quantizing and all of that stuff. And now I just go straight to Logic Drummer, man. So I'm telling this to any guitarist, actually any bass player, keyboard player, whoever you are. If you need drum support for something you're working on, or you just want to get inspired by pulling up a Logic Drummer and building a track, which will take you 10, 15 minutes maybe, you can immediately have a pretty freaking great sounding drummer supporting you and doing whatever you want to do. So thank you for bringing that up. I'm a huge fan.
A couple of thoughts just on that. Number one, I find playing along to drummer a lot easier than playing along to a metronome. I mean, it's just because it makes a little more sense to your brain to play along with someone else. Yes. Number two, I do empathize with folks who maybe diss drummer at the outset, because when I first saw Logic Pro 10 drop and there's this new thing called drummer, my first inclination was just kind of like, what the heck do I need this for? This, like all the different profiles, this looks so dumb. This seems so cheeseball.
Right.
But once you get to know drummer, it suddenly becomes like, I can't imagine life without drummer. This is so much better than trying to program drums by hand or, having to, get studio time to record a drummer and teach the drummer. And it saves you so much time.
A lot of times in my band Cosmic Spin, what we do is mix. We'll have samples that sort of create a bed, and often like the first verse, first chorus may just be samples, right? It's sample drums. Yeah. But then I want to bring in a real drummer to support that and take it to the next level. And the ability to push and pull the feel on the drummer is just incredible. Like I've had some samples that are really laggy, cool, groovy samples. And I'll think, can Logic drag that much? Can I keep Logic that far behind the beat? And the drummer, sure, you just dial that drummer down and it's there. And now you got a sample locked to the Logic drummer who sounds like a real player. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. It is.
All right. So thank you for that. I'll add one thing for Electric Guitarists, something that I like. There are a bunch of presets in Logic that when you open up, you got a guitar track and you've recorded it in dry, most likely straight, chord straight into your interface or however you do it. And or you want to get a little bit inspired while you're recording. There's a whole bunch of presets in there, and you may never leave one on a final recording, but for quick inspiration, for not having to stop your session to go and search for or try to build a tone, pretty incredible. There have been a number of times when I've gone in and just found a voice, played it because it inspired me, And later I'll go back and maybe tweak it a little, but a lot of times those preset voices are kind of like, wow, pretty incredible. So, it's a different approach, but for those of us who are DIYers, who are alone in our studios, and who, like me, I have limited time. I have other stuff I do in my day job. I got to get results quickly when I'm recording. I can always go back later. I know I can go back later, but while I'm recording, I just need inspiration. I need a good bass tone. Yeah, there it is. I can get it quick. So that's my other comment for electric guitarists.
Yeah, there's actually in the library, which what Logic calls its preset sort of menu on the left-hand side. There's a preset in electric guitar called Woolly Octave. And I've had so much fun with that. It uses a Dr. Octave plugin, which basically just, creates a separate parallel subsonic line. And that just mirrors what you're playing. But that is a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun to dig into.
Very cool. I'm not sure exactly how to approach this topic, but I'm thinking about an acoustic guitarist who now wants to sit down and get a really professional, beautifully recorded version of the way they play. Is there a mic that you might lead them to right away that you think gives consistent results and will get somebody, up to that level of that really sounds like a professional recording?
I'm a humongous fan of the Aston Spirit microphone, which is Aston's relatively new. I think they turned 5 years old. I tried some of their other microphones, didn't fall in love with them, but the Aston Spirit I use for vocals. It's plugged in, ready to go all the time, but I've used it on acoustic guitars as well. And I picked up a trick actually from Sound on Sound magazine that was talking about distance when recording various instruments. I think it was Paul White, who is not the editor anymore, but he's still in the mix. He suggested is basically measure the length of the body of the acoustic guitar and have your mic set up that distance away from the acoustic guitar, pointing between the sound hole and the 12th fret, right around there. But it gives enough distance so you're not getting that woolly, woofy, sound hole sound, but you also don't get all the weird finger picking and no body. So the Aston Spirit about that distance away, the body of the guitar, and that I've recorded acoustic guitars and I love the sound. And it's tough with acoustic guitars because so much of it is dependent on the room, the guitar, the player, the movement of the player. That's a big one. So you have to you really got to nail down all those specifics at the recording stage. But I guess I would say the Aston Spirit, which is great too, because it has a figure 8 pattern. So if you're recording vocals as well, you can flip on the figure 8 and then do some noise rejection, so you only get the vocals and the guitar and you're not getting everything, meshing together, I guess.
That's a cool tip. And it's not necessarily a mic anybody else is going to be telling you about. So that's cool. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
What does an Aston Spirit cost? Do you know?
I think $400 to $500.
Okay, so pretty reasonable as these things go. I mean, one of the things that I've been thinking about is for someone just coming into this and saying, okay, I want to really get professional recordings, they've got to expect to make some investment, right? We're going to presume they already own a Macintosh computer, so that doesn't even count, right? So they plunked down $199 on Logic, which gives them basically everything that used to cost us at least $250,000, like back in 1995 when I was doing my thing. So now you've got $250,000 in audio gear just right there for you. Okay, you might have to pay somewhere around $500 for a really good mic. There are obviously other choices besides the Aston Spirit, but I think that's a cool choice. I just got a Townsend Sphere L22.
Oh yeah,
which is the one that's the modeling mic.
Absolutely.
And I got to say, my first impressions of it are just this is outrageous. It's pretty freaking incredible. But that's a whole, most of it is kind of the universal audio world. I did dip my toe enough in that I got hooked. So that's a whole other story. Anyway, let's talk about vocalists for a minute. So someone is let's say there's a little self-conscious about their vocals. They're a good singer, but whatever. They think, oh gosh, I listen to myself back and I can hear, I'm a little flat on that note. What can Logic do for that vocalist to give them the confidence to, do their best work?
Probably the first thing is that you can use the software mixer when you're recording. You can throw on reverb, for a little comfort to kind of get you into a good creative space. Additionally, Logic also offers flex pitch, which is basically Melodyne, but it comes with Logic Pro. So it allows you to tune the pitch of individual notes. So if you get a great take, and this happens all the time, you nail a great take, the emotion's there, but maybe a couple notes are just like, they could be better. But the performance is really well done. Otherwise, you can just open up flex pitch on an individual track basis. So you can say, hey, Logic, analyze my vocals. And then you get right into the editor and you can say, okay, they look like MIDI notes in a piano roll. And you just move the notes to the correct placement, or you can fine tune it. So it's just like, oh, maybe just bump it up a little sense here or there. Don't get too heavy handed with it because you don't want to sound like a robot either. And it very easily, and I use it all the time. Anything that comes with recording on a computer, while automated processes will get you 80-90% of the way there. Like if you take the pitch slider and just select all the notes and say, correct it 100%, it will get you most of the way, but it's not going to get you 100%. It does require a little manual labor on your behalf. But it sounds great and it works really well.
So I couldn't agree more. I have to say, I think flex pitch, the first time I used it, I thought this is impossible. How could I be doing what I'm doing? Partly because of the way it analyzes formants and other aspects of the way the vocalist has said a certain or sang a certain word. When you go in and you can make those micro adjustments and say, okay, I'm going to, right now, this particular note is negative, minus 32 cents off the correct pitch. And you can say, I'm only going to take it up to minus 16 because I want it to sound like I'm straining for that voice, for that note. Something that happens really intriguingly, like when my wife and I we record at the same time, both of us singing. And so,
wow.
We're in separate mics and we get a dry take that's going to separate tracks, of course. There's always a little bit of bleed from those mics. We don't care. But when we go in, there'll be these moments where, because you're singing in harmony, sometimes you're actually adjusting your pitch to match the other person. And that might be a little sharp or a little flat because you're matching, you're both listening, you're both singing. It's all this interactive stuff going on. Yeah. To be able to later go in and say, all right, we're going to make a little adjustment to those things to tighten up those harmonies is great. But another thing we've been able to do is to say, we want a part a third above or a third below what you're doing there. Just as a backup part, you can duplicate those notes. You can drag them down a third. And you don't even go back into the studio, but it sounds exactly like you recorded another take. We've actually built, 3-4 part harmonies sometimes with notes that were just copied and dragged around in the flex pitch area.
That's
it's
amazing.
Insane. Anyway,
I love that.
Yeah. So, I that felt like a $20,000 feature to me when they rolled it out.
I love the fact that it's just built into Logic and it's not this separate plugin that's floating around that you got to navigate and not accidentally hit Command Z to undo. And then you end up removing the plugin instead of like undoing, a step. That has happened to me so many times where I lose all my edits because I undid and Melodyne just disappeared because it was the last thing I did in Logic. So,
my gosh. Okay. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Wow. Brutal. That makes me think too. I can't even think of what the name of it. There's the flex pitch, but there's also, what do they call the rhythm one where you're
flex
sliding
time.
Flex time. Thank you.
Flex time. I use that. That came out in Logic 9 and that was golden out of the gate. I use it for editing everything. It sounds fantastic. You just have to pick the right mode for your instrument. But
yeah, and my dog. She's
cool.
She's busy. She's guarding us. She's guarding you too, Chris. You don't know.
All right, perfect.
You're safe.
All right, good to know.
Yeah, something that happened to me not long ago. I had a acoustic guitar part I'd laid down on something, and the way it is, you're playing guitar, and literally like one strum, I really missed the beat for whatever reason. I have no idea what I did. Like my pick wasn't in my hand right. And it was pretty nasty. And I thought, can I use flex time to correct this and have it be completely undetectable? And it was so fast and easy. I mean, just almost absurdly just, okay, there's the chord. I can see the strum, just pull it over a little bit. Everything else sort of, the way it just kind of corrects to it. It feels so intuitive and easy. And then I thought, oh, well, there it is. I don't have to re-record. I can't tell you the number of times it saved me from having to do a complete different pass or at least a punch in out. It's a godsend, truly.
Yeah, that's what I tell folks. I just had a friend here recording, and he was kind of like, oh man, were those drums good enough that we recorded from like the week before? Like, oh, the timing's a little iffy. And I just had to keep reassuring him, just, dude, this will take no time at all to fix. It will be completely invisible. You don't have to worry about it. And then I sent him a bounce because he's sending the track to his buddy in California to record bass. And he was like, wow, it sounds so good now. I'm like, yeah, man, it takes zero effort. It's awesome.
Yeah. So kind of what we're saying is that even for somewhat of an amateur musician or someone who's maybe their rhythmic skills aren't just totally locked in or their feel isn't perfect, a vocalist who is singing a little bit sharp or flat at various times, Logic's an amazing tool to be able to correct those things in an indetectable way. I think that's the key for me, is that it doesn't ever sound to me like, oh, this has been messed with, like someone spent hours doing surgery on it and now it's all just clinically perfect. All right. Ooh. Hey man, thanks again. I'll hook up with you later and I'll certainly send you a copy when things are wrapped up and edited.
Yeah, please do. Whenever it goes live, I'll absolutely happily share it. Cool. This was a ton of fun, and
I appreciate what you're doing. And like I said, you've helped me a million times. So,
well, thank you.
Awesome, man.
Thank you.
So my interview with Chris went on for about another 20 minutes, and we covered some fun, slightly more geeky topics. Do leave a note in the comments if you want me to post that extra content, or if you just want to thank Chris for being here and sharing all of his knowledge. So here's the thing, whether you're starting out with GarageBand or you're actually diving into Logic, you really should check out whylogicprorules.com. You can get signed up for Chris's free weekly videos. I mean, no charge, nothing to lose, right? For another video about recording your own music, go here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on Guitar Discoveries.